I know I'm not particularly unique in that the amount I simp for this man is honestly embarrassing. I'm like Doja Cat in that one FNAF clip literally all the time.
Got that sexy smolder though. What are you looking at? Kind of giving me that look when you give me that look.
So here I am, the Albedo simp, making a bullet journal themed after his existence. Here's a little backstory for how that idea came to be. For my birthday back in October, my boyfriend bought me Genshin keychains of Keqing, Ningguang, and Albedo. Keqing because I main her, and Albedo and Ningguang because they're part of my, I like to call, my Geo harem. My boyfriend forgot a certain grandpa though. The keychains ended up being huge, and not all of them could fit on my keys. It looked kind of ridiculous because they're so giant. So I have Keqing on my keys, and now I just have the other two kind of sitting around. That brings us to now. I needed a bullet journal for 2022, and I wanted to bind it myself for a couple of reasons. I wanted it to have that nice flat back moment, and I also wanted to control the amount of pages as well as put my Albedo keychain on something. Hence, the Albedo bullet journal was born, themed after his name card, and I actually love it so much. What you're seeing me do now is finalize the covers in digital means. So I'm doing this so that I can print it out later and then use it as somewhat of a stencil. The plan was to paint the cover, paint it onto fabric, and then glue that fabric onto the covers. So then it's a little bit more durable. I could use acrylic paint, and I wouldn't be like really worried about water and stuff. And here is how they both turned out. My next step was to make paper. When I said I wanted to make this, I wanted to make it from scratch, and I had been saving paper that I could recycle. And step number 1 is to get a blender to use to blend your paper. Got that blender off of Facebook Marketplace for $10. Will bite me in the ass later, just letting you know. So I'm here just shredding this paper that I had saved up over a semester or two. And I found out that I made way too much, so do not shred this much, please. Do not shred this much paper. You will regret it later. The step after that is obviously to soak that paper in water. So I ended up soaking it for, I think, just overnight. So she's nice and moist and soaked. And then you carry that away. So the next step is to blend your sopping wet paper. I'm gonna stop. Blend your paper into a pulp with a bunch of water and a blender. And you can see Mr. Blue Shirt. That's my dad, Mr. Micromanager. Love him.
How it could be done a little bit better.
Okay, what would you do differently, Mr. Expert? It is smoking. Can you see it? Right there. Yes, ladies and gents, that was the moment my $10 blender from Facebook Marketplace died. Yeah, it died. So the next day, got a new blender and got back to fucking work after a little bit of a cry. Don't doubt that I definitely cried about it. Next day, on that paper grind, doing my paper thing, with my new blender. It's a Ninja blender, which is super fancy, very expensive. Was also a Facebook Marketplace listing. My boyfriend found it for $50. He haggled them down to $20. So I guess you could say with the last blender, you get what you pay for. But with this one, you definitely don't get what you pay for because I paid only $20 for it. And that's like $100 blender. Material girl. So here I'm actually making the paper. It was really fun, other than this fucking mold and decal that I bought off of Amazon was absolute trash. So the mold and decal, so the part that I was pressing on and that part that's kind of hanging out, they were originally connected, caused a lot of problems. Boyfriend and I disconnected it, easy peasy. The edges of the paper, whenever I took off the mesh one, I don't know which one is which, it would take off the edges of the paper and it would look really bad, and we weren't really understanding why. It turns out that it had like this lip that if it is there, it causes problems, and it continued to cause problems for us.
Wow. Amazing design.
The whole bottom. What the fuck is this pokey shit?
It's from the top? Is it just literally just like a little cinnamon?
Wow, this is so shitty. This is literally so shitty. Wow. What the fuck? Did they use water-soluble glue? You're shitting me. After the mold and decal drama, things tended to go a little bit more smoothly, other than I learned that I know literally jack shit about making paper. I had troubles with it bleeding, I had troubles with the texture. This ended up coming down to the kind of fabric that I was using and not having any sizing. So my plan in the future is to just put this one to the side and make some kind of comprehensive paper guide once I've worked out all the kinks in this process. So for the rest of this project, I end up using paper that I bought. I bought 160 GSM paper, or 90-pound paper, which is a paper that's used in a lot of really high quality bullet journals. You can buy a skein for like $12. So that's what I ended up doing, and that's what I ended up using for the rest of the project. Next thing you see me doing is I'm painting the fabric for my covers. My plan was to paint this cotton that I had in my stash and then glue it onto the chipboard. So then the chipboard was nice and contained and didn't have any chance of denting or peeling apart, because that's not the most durable material. So I figured that it would be a lot more durable if I coated it in a fabric that was coated in a plastic, aka acrylic paint. So acrylic paint is not water soluble, so it dries down as a plastic and hence is pretty durable. So that's what I decided to do to make these covers really long lasting. Before this, I ended up printing out those digital files that I made prior, cut them out into little stencils, and that's how I transferred the design onto the fabric. Turns out I'm fucking stupid, big dumb idiot, and didn't even make the digital files the right size, so I had to do a lot of finagling to get it to fit properly, but they ended up working out pretty okay. Next step in preparing the covers was to insert the elastic. You can see in my design here that I have elastic holding the keychain, one for a pen, and then one to wrap around the edges of the bullet journal. I was pretty anxious for this. I made it up as I went, but it turned out pretty okay, so here's why I will explain it. My big fancy plan was to take 2 pieces of chipboard and then sandwich the elastic together. So step number 1 for that was figuring out where I wanted the elastic to go and then carve out the inside bit to make those sides thinner, so when the elastic was sandwiched in between, the cover would remain the same thickness. I then used the same fabric that I used for the cover, painted it to match, and sandwiched those edges where the elastic would go. So then once the cover was completely together, you wouldn't be able to see the chipboard at all. What I do next is I glue the elastic that I had prepared onto one of the pieces of the chipboard. I don't sandwich it together yet because I take the fabric and then glue it to the front side of the other cover. So then I am able to cut out the edges where the elastic and that fabric overlap. So once I fold the fabric back, there's nothing that needs to be cut. So this makes things a lot easier to glue the fabric on at this point than after the covers have been sandwiched together. So after I do that, I do sandwich the covers together, and then I glue down the sides of this fabric to create the finished cover. While I was making this project, my bestie came to visit me, and they decided to hop in on the fun too and made this cute one with faux fur cow print, and I loved it, so I thought it'd be fun to share with you. So something that I didn't end up recording was printing the paper. I printed a dot grid on either side of the paper that I ended up buying, and you see me here just poking the holes in that paper, preparing my signatures for the binding process. So what you're seeing me do now is the actual binding of the book. I ended up using the Coptic stitch, and I used a YouTube tutorial that was really helpful. I will link it in the description if you're interested in trying it yourself. If you don't have a book press and you really want to try binding a book, this is the stitch for you. This is the stitch for me. This is a stitch for everybody. It was super easy, very intuitive. I found the process super enjoyable. And again, you don't really need a press to do it. So highly recommend this stitch if you want to try binding a book. Really accessible, really easy. I'm honestly really eager to bind more books with this stitch, but I have a lot of other projects lined up, so we'll see. But I am open to doing more Genshin characters. I don't think all of them, because that's a really tall order for one person, but let me know if you guys are interested in that. So what you're seeing me do now is take this nice colored paper and glue it in between the cover and the first page of the book. All this does is just cover that nasty fabric edge, those first stitches that are on the back of that cover, as well as make that first page look nice and pretty. This is how I attached the ribbon to the book. So I did it through this like back piece of paper, and I decided where I wanted the ribbon to be. I then cut a hole for the ribbon. I glued the ribbon inside, and then on the back side I glued another piece of that paper, so everything was nice and smooth, and all you could see was the nice paper, and there were no gaps into the viewing of the chipboard. And then I just glued that guy in like normal. Bada bing, bada bam. You have a ribbon in your book. You could do this the same way that you did the elastic if you wanted in the cover, but I did not. And I put it in the back. Usually they're put in the spine, but I have no spine. So I just did it like this, and then I closed it with all these papers inside, and I let it sit under a book while it dried. I ended up getting bubbles. I don't know why, and I don't know how to fix it. So, I don't know, do it differently than me, I guess. Next, I'm just cutting the ribbon. I didn't cut the ribbon before because I wanted it to be the exact length you burn it. Mine was too small, so don't do that. So, as you can tell with your eyeballs, I'm not writing down January. I am writing down February, in fact, because I finished this so late that I can only use it for the last week of January. So that bullet journal spread, ugly. It's minimal, which doesn't mean it's ugly, but it is ugly because I messed it up a bunch. And it was just something quick so then I could start using it. And I did the stuff at the beginning, like my future log. I don't do a ton in the front there. You'll see it at the end. I show everything. But I wanted to include something of me using it, so I thought I'd just show you my February because it's cute. And I like it. I think it turned out pretty okay. Yeah, so I guess I'll just shut up and let you watch me draw. And we're back for Miss Final Flip Through. You can tell that I don't do too much in the beginning, but I did make it Albedo themed, at least color palette wise. Ignore that gold up there looks super ugly. And also that my January isn't that pretty. Ignore that too. But I'm showing you anyway. Just so my February looks extra cute when you get to it. There she is. And my theory on the flat back, 100% right. So much easier to use, having this flat back more than anything. And watch me pull that away in the most ugly, slow, weird way possible. Anyway, if you want me to make other Genshin books, just let me know, and I'll do it. Maybe. Okay, bye!